After Spyro the Dragon had been deemed a success, Insomniac Games began to work on a sequel, and Spyro 2: Ripto's Rage, known in PAL territories as Gateway to Glimmer, dropped in late 1999, a little over a year after the original. The game sees Spyro and his dragonfly friend Sparx attempting to go on a vacation, only to be forcibly recruited by Avalars, residents of Avalar, to defeat the recently arrived tyrant, Ripto. The plot here is Saturday morning cartoon stuff, but in a mascot platformer, that's all it needs to be. And it is a huge, huge, huge improvement over the original in this department. Right off the bat, it's clear as day that the plot and characters are vastly superior. We get a little bit more backstory about Avalar's history and Ripto's arrival as the story goes on, and the game achieves it without throwing in too many cutscenes. Although it does have way more than the original, but that's not saying much. The new characters are cool. Elora serves as sort of a guide and narrator, Hunter provides comedic relief, we've got this old quirky professor guy. It's nothing spectacular, but it's all we need in this type of game, and it's something that the original sorely lacked. The only important characters there were our juvenile and annoying hero and our bland and weak villain. And that's another thing, Spyro doesn't just get a new voice actor in this game, he gets a whole personality overhaul. Tom Kenny, one of the most prolific voice actors of our time, best known for his role as SpongeBob SquarePants, takes what was once an irritating brat brought to life by the guy who voiced the Taco Bell dog, and remolds him into more of a reluctant hero, but one that is still confident in his abilities, and still shows his cocky side when it's necessary.
If you want to test that power crystal, why don't you try it on me? I'll stand still, I promise.
Our protagonist is actually likable. And Ripto? This guy is the polar opposite of Gnasty Gnorc. He doesn't set out to take over Avalar because he's having a temper fit. He's just a complete raging imperialist, and he's awesome.
Say hello to your new king.
A lot of the voice acting in this game falls into the corny but charming category, and Ripto in particular is delightfully over the top.
Meow! You despicable little creature! I'll kill you!
The core gameplay is mostly the same as the first, with some refinements and additions. The level theming, art style, and music, composed once again by the master Stuart Copeland, is just as good as it was previously, and the graphics, which were already good in the first game, are definitely a step up. The overall formula of advance from hub to hub while going through portals to reach main levels is retained, but there are fewer homeworlds this time, only 3 as opposed to 5. You'd think that would make for a shorter game, but it doesn't necessarily, because there's much more to do in the main levels this time. Each one contains various NPCs and even its own mini-story, complete with a brief cutscene at the beginning and end. In the first 2 homeworlds, you receive a talisman upon reaching the end of each level. So, what's the point of that?
If you don't know what to do with the talisman, maybe you could make a nice soup with it.
The talismans are essentially just the game's way to get you to visit every level in each homeworld before you move on to the next homeworld. It isn't revealed until the 3rd and final homeworld that the true collectible of this game, the one that you need a certain amount of at the end in order to fight Ripto, and then more of to power up a super portal to finally reach your vacation spot, is orbs. Some orbs are simply hidden for you to explore and find, but most require completing some sort of challenge for an NPC in order to earn them. This is what I was referring to when I said there was more to do in the levels this time, before I began rambling incoherently. These include timed challenges, target practice, collection quests. Some are fun, others are annoying, like the Lightning Stones mission featuring the most inefficient thieves of all time. Rescue missions, stealth segments, escort missions, which are more like trial and error memory exams in this game, stuff with vehicles, flight challenges, both platforming style and Superman 64 style, albeit with much better controls. Chasing down thieves, which is reminiscent of the egg thieves in the first game, and chasing down a dude in a turban on a magic carpet who chucks bombs at you in an Arabian-themed level.
Well, two can play at this bombing game.
Yeah. The game really does an excellent job at providing a lot of mission variety without going too overboard. A lot of platformers that feature these type of missions fall into the trap of including too many different types without refining the varying control schemes well enough. There are very few challenges here with crappy controls. Most of them are just fine. The biggest complaint that I have is that I wish there were more puzzle missions. And no, not like the mindless guessing games in Idle Springs. More like the item trading quest in Mystic Marsh. It actually forces you to use your brain. I had so much fun figuring it out as a kid. Since there are friendly NPCs this time, Spyro is no longer committing genocide in every level by killing every last breathing creature everywhere he goes like he did in the first game. He is, however, committing war crimes. Two of the worlds in this game, Breeze Harbor and Zephyr, are at war. That's really cool, huh? The mini plots of the levels even interact with each other. But I digress. Spyro actively aids each of them during his trips there. Providing support for both sides of a war is a war crime, right? Am I correct on that? Flight levels are back too, only they're renamed to speedways, and contain an additional hidden orb challenge. Gems, of course, return as well, and the collecting of them is required thanks to the addition of another new character, Moneybags. I didn't mention him when going over the characters before because he's barely a character, more of an obstacle, although he is really funny at times.
Take that! I'm back!
Boo! Ah! Why are you?
Paying Moneybags small fees is needed to unlock new levels, cross bridges within levels, use vehicles. You get the idea. You can't get through the game without paying him. He's also a war profiteer.
Those darn birds in Zephyr never paid me for all the bombs and TNT barrels I gave them.
And apparently capable of teleportation. In addition to this, he also teaches Spyro a new ability in each homeworld in exchange for
a small fee.
These abilities are underwater swimming, climbing, and head bashing, and they are essential to reach new areas and to do certain challenges. Each homeworld contains some levels that cannot be completed 100% without learning a new ability later on, creating forced backtracking, unlike in the first game. Now, I'm not completely against backtracking in platformers, but it is done entirely wrong here. There's really no reason for the turtle rescue mission to be stuck behind a wall you have to climb. Climbing has nothing to do with the mission itself. It's just padding to add artificial length to a game that could be considered short. And, worst of all, every time you exit and re-enter any level, everything resets itself upon returning, with the exception of gem collecting and Moneybags payments. This is a problem for multiple reasons, but the biggest of which involves the Fracture Hills level, where Hunter is found with his feet cased in stone. You free him and earn an orb by completing an absolutely miserable escort mission with a blind as a bat alchemist, which is pure trial and error. Just look at this. Once you free him and get the orb, you unlock a second orb mission where you team up with Hunter and fight enemies using the head bash ability that you don't unlock until the next homeworld. That would be all well and good, except that when you come back after having learned the head bash, the level has been reset and you have to do the alchemist bullshit all over again. That is atrocious. So a word of wisdom to any new players. The first time you go through Fracture Hills and you see Hunter stuck in rock and unable to move, leave him there. I learned that one the hard way as a kid. Another word of wisdom is that the backtracking in Glimmer can be avoided like this. Although it is really difficult to pull off. Going back to the gems, enemies no longer drop them after dying like they do in the first game. Instead, their souls are harvested to activate power-ups used to complete previously mentioned challenges, and sometimes for accessing new parts of a level, most notably with the spring. The other power-ups are Supercharge, Super Flame, Full Flight, Ice Breath, and Invulnerability. and they're all really cool and fun to use. So yeah, there's lots more to do in this game. But at the same time, there isn't. The levels in the first game were so vast, so open, and so full of things to find through exploration. The levels of Spyro 2, on the other hand, are far more confined, and the focus, primarily, is instead on navigating a linear environment that is disguised as an open world, while completing small tasks along the way to unlock the next part of the level. Sunny Beach is really just a big escort mission in a mostly straight line, which you're required to do twice thanks to the forced backtracking. The more constrained levels means that this game features less genuine platforming and fewer big and challenging glides. Although for the genuine platforming and big glides the game does feature, a hover ability can be performed with the triangle button to give some more depth to this gameplay mechanic, and it's required to use it for the toughest glides. Unlike in the previous game, where the triangle button simply drops you to the ground like a bag full of hammers. When I think about the lack of exploration to be had here, it really makes me wish there were more hidden orbs, to recapture the feeling of scouring the land for all those crystallized dragons in the first game. Unfortunately, there's only a few, and they're limited to the home worlds. This makes Spyro 2 far easier than the first when it comes to collectibles, and for the most part, the enemies aren't as tough either. The only thing Spyro 2 does make more challenging is the bosses. There are 3, one following each homeworld, like in the first game. But unlike the first game, they're not some of the most sad, pathetic, embarrassing excuses for boss fights in the history of gaming. The first 2 are against Ripto's lackeys, Crush and Gulp, and while these fights do not reinvent the wheel, they are perfectly fine and far, far, far superior to any of the disposable stooges found in the original. And the final fight with Ripto is awesome. Really, it is. There's so much building up to it. Spyro and Ripto trade insults throughout the game. Ripto periodically blows a fuse over how much he despises dragons.
I hate dragons! Yeah!
Now, none of this really seems remarkable, but in the first game, Gnasty Gnorc has no character development at all. And he and Spyro don't even encounter one another until the very end when it's time to fight. And when they do, it's super anticlimactic. Ripto is a marathon boss, which is something that's easy to screw up, but it's done perfectly here. You get to fight each other with orb power-ups, he creates a Mecha Gulp like Mecha Godzilla, it's great. And for the final phase, you duke it out in the sky before you send him to meet his maker, never to be heard from again. After defeating Ripto, you finally get to take your long-awaited vacation to Dragon Shores. It's okay, but nowhere near as fun as Gnasty's loot. It's just a series of carnival minigames, and the most dangerous roller coaster of all time. By winning these Carny games, you earn tokens, which allow you entry to the Dragon Shores Theater, to re-watch the game's cutscenes. That's an okay reward, I guess. A better one is what you get after finding all 64 orbs and all 10,000 gems. A permanent Super Flame power-up. Hell yes. This game is good. Really good. I complained about the linear nature of its levels, but I still really like almost all of them. And talk about a huge variety of environments and themes. Gem mines, mountains, badlands, glaciers, war zones, and an active volcano. And with that variety of theming comes a wide variety of enemies. Dinosaurs, warlocks, wooden idols come to life, dudes with shotguns, and a freaking Yeti. It's not just Gnorc after Gnorc after Gnorc this time. I'm running the risk here of making my review sound like an advertisement, but really I'm blown away by all of the cool creatures to be found in these living, breathing worlds. It's also fun to meet such a huge variety of NPCs, from monks to hippos to cavemen to robot farmers, and I love their hilarious voice acting.
How am I supposed to achieve enlightenment if you keep pestering me?
In addition to voicing Spyro, Tom Kenny does a lot of these NPCs as well, and he even uses what is basically his SpongeBob voice for the citizens of Hurricos.
We've always had trouble with the gear grinders, but now they've set up force fields to separate us.
As I mentioned before, this game came out only about a year after the first, and because the first wasn't an immediate success, it took it a few months before sales really started happening. I imagine it didn't go into development immediately after the original's release. The consensus appears to be that this game was slightly rushed. Despite appearing to be entirely complete, albeit a bit on the short side, and despite its high level of quality, I can believe it was a bit rushed for two major reasons. Number one is that it's apparently full of glitches. I say apparently because I never actually run into any myself when I'm playing it, but just look up a speedrun of the game. It's possible to beat Ripto within minutes after starting, just by exploiting a variety of glitches. Now, to be fair, this is pretty common with early 3D games, but the second reason, while it isn't confirmed, signs point to the intention of including 4 homeworlds instead of 3. They're named after the seasons: Summer Forest, Autumn Plains, Winter Tundra. Where's the Spring homeworld? Also, why does Autumn Plains have so many more levels than the other two? Why are there 2 speedways instead of 1, like every other homeworld in the series? I've always thought it was safe to say that a spring homeworld was planned but axed due to time constraints, and its levels were stuffed into Autumn Plains. But this is apparently not the case. In a Twitch stream of Spyro 3 by the development team that worked on the series, a fan asked them about this directly, and while they didn't explicitly say, "No, absolutely not, there was never a spring homeworld," they also didn't remember there ever being one. Now, this stream did occur about 20 years after the game came out, so if it was scrapped really early on, it's entirely possible they simply forgot. But still, other than the conventional wisdom that seasonal theming would make the number 4 obvious, there is no actual evidence that a 4th homeworld was ever envisioned. Plus, a 4th homeworld would likely necessitate a 4th ability for Spyro to purchase from Moneybags, and a 4th boss. However, fans have theorized that the mecha pterodactyl creature Ripto creates in the final fight was what the additional boss would have been, and spitting rocks would be the additional ability, rather than something Spyro just knows innately. This comes from it having been used as a selling point in early promotional materials. I'll put a link in the description to a really great blog post on the topic of cut content from Spyro 2. Oddly enough, this post was actually written by a fan who concluded that they don't think the game was rushed. But despite the potentially rushed development cycle, Spyro 2, like the first game, shines in the detail department. I love how the pigs in Fracture Hills dance to the bagpipe music. I love that you can blow up cacti in Skilo's Badlands, and like in the first game, I love its atmosphere. Whether you're talking about a game, a movie, a piece of music, or whatever, it's hard to define what atmosphere is. Actually, no, it isn't hard. This right here is atmosphere. The force fields are back, and this time they work together with elevators in Metropolis, and some other levels, to mask what are, objectively, loading screens, which makes for a more immersive experience and builds on the portal mechanic introduced in the first game. The game literally fools you into thinking that a loading screen isn't there by making it look like an adventure. It's brilliant. Metropolis happens to be one of my favorite levels, by the way. The futuristic theming, the funny robot characters, and the kamikaze cows are all so cool. Along with the massive open area at the end, complete with a combo power-up and one of the most fun challenges in the game. I also love Hurricos for its emphasis on platforming, Skilo's Badlands for its awesome theming and characters, Mystic Marsh for its fun challenges and for being one of the more open levels the game has to offer, Cloud Temples for the coolest enemies and big glides, and Colossus because it has monks and a Yeti. What more do you need? Overall, I personally prefer the first game in the series due to it being more straightforward, more challenging, and having a greater focus on exploration and platforming. But there's no denying that the sequel improves upon it in a wide variety of ways, from the story, characters, and world building, to the boss battles and expanded game mechanics. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please consider subscribing, leaving a thumbs up, sharing, and ringing the bell so you'll know when the next leaky faucet review comes out. Thanks for watching and have a great day.